It is Friday, October 12th, 2018. It is 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and so you know what time it is. It's time for a little bit of coin metal. And it was a surprisingly jiu-jitsu-free Get Your Ass Kicked at Jiu-Jitsu Friday. And yeah, for whatever reason, the coach decided today was a good day to work on our stand-up technique a little bit, a little bit of striking, and I thought it was very appropriate, honestly, because there is that segment of the fight, regardless of who you're fighting and in what context that you are fighting them, where the fight will be standing, and we did concentrate more on a self-defense kind of perspective, so it had that context to it, where somebody was swinging at you, and in response you would be doing X, and so we got in quite a bit of stand-up training today, and I really appreciated that, honestly, because, like I said, there's always a period of the fight where you're going to be standing. You're not going to start on the ground, and so being able to get from standing to the ground is good to have, and so as far as how well I did at it, I guess okay. I did get an orange belt in Kempo karate a long time ago, back in the day. I think it was like 13 or 14. So that was like the extent of my actual relatively formal stand-up training, and so one of the things that has always been with me as far as my opinion and perspective on stand-up goes has been that I've always felt that you were, assuming of course you were born with 2 arms and 2 legs, because some people aren't that fortunate. It happens. There's nothing wrong with it. But the point being that the vast majority of us have 2 arms, 2 legs, right? And so it's always struck me as odd that you should train as though you have a default. It's like mandatory that you be restricted to leading with one side. And I've never liked that perspective where a boxing trainer or boxing coach or whatever would specifically train somebody to concentrate solely on one side of their body, and kind of neglect the other side. I've never enjoyed that, and as a matter of fact, even with as little experience, formally or otherwise, that I do have with striking training, I've always sought to cultivate in myself a more ambidextrous style, being able to flow seamlessly from left lead to right lead, and I've found that the more that I've done that, and the more fluid that I've been at it, the more my opponent has to work, because every time they have to reset their lead to something they're not used to, it completely confounds them. They end up having to reassess, try to figure out where their angles are again, and then go in and try to attack. Well, if by the time you're working on your attack, I've already swapped leads again, now you've got to reposition, reassess your angles, and then attack. Oh fuck, you changed his leads again. Reassess your position, assess your angles, and then... And, you do that to somebody for 10 or 15 seconds, and it really starts to wear on them, as far as they're trying to set up. They're trying to set up for that kick. They're trying to set up for that punch or that takedown attempt or something to that effect. And, like I said, if they say they're going for a single leg and you swipe that leg back, or they're going for a double leg and you swipe that leg back, okay, now you're rebalanced and they're open, and you could just lead them all the way through into getting them on the ground. Their takedown attempt just turned into them being on the ground and you being dominant, knee on belly. So that's where I've focused as far. I mean, that's the kind of example that I derived that rationale from, the the idea that you shouldn't be restricted to one side or the other as your dominant. You shouldn't have a dominant. You got 2 arms, 2 legs. You should be working your body. Your body is the weapon, not just your right leg, not just your right arm. Your body is the weapon. Anyway, as far as what we're going to talk about today, I've been watching the old Twitter feed, and a lot of people have been chewing on Mr. Roubini for his opinion, and I guess he gave some sort of presentation to Congress or some shit like that, and people have been kind of chewing on him because of it. And he posted a challenge on Twitter. He said basically we're all a bunch of scammers and assholes and so on and so forth, and that's true. But it's actually due to the fact that crypto is just a microcosm of the greater market. If you regard the stock market as in like Wall Street with the same eyes that you do crypto, you find the same shit. There's no difference. But I wanted to find this tweet so I could read this guy to you. Let's see here. This is what he wrote. Crypto Twitter is a cesspool of bots, trolls, shills, scammers, crypto zealots, and lunatics. Barking dogs that attack me after losing 90% in last year. None read my paper, and none have any substantial critique. This motley crew is a bunch of pathetic lunatics and holding losers. Kind of scathing, right? And so I responded. I said, I could have sworn you blocked me. Glad that wasn't the case. Yes, crypto Twitter is all of those things. It also hosts some of the minds that are going to end up saving civilization from the ineptitude and greed of central bankers. That's why I'm here, because I believe that. I believe that even with all the fucking mudslinging and the poop chucking and all that shit that's going on out there, you know what? That's humans as far as I'm concerned. But that among you and among all those ideas that you're throwing back and forth and that you're proselytizing to one another, that among all of that is going to emerge, if it hasn't already, the currency standards that will lead us into the 21st century. And I really believe that because we've seen places where it has expressed exactly as that. We've already seen use cases where it has done exactly that. And so that leads me to believe that it is within its nature to repeat that for us. That it doesn't have to be all craptastic and fucked and all that other stuff. And so Mr. Roubini's assessment of everybody being losers and whatever, you know what? He might be right. And I don't really care. Because as big of losers as some of you guys may be, I consider you smarter than about 99% of humanity. So, I mean, just the fact that you're even here. I don't even give a fuck if you're a shill. I don't even give a fuck if you're working for fucking bankers. The fact that you're actually here participating in this community, I think you're among the smartest people on fucking planet Earth. And I really believe that due to all of this discourse and due to the communication between us, that we will divine the standards that actually work. And like I said, I'm not convinced that we don't already have them. Bitcoin itself worked just fine for an extended period of time, so I don't see why there isn't the possibility that it could just go back to its regular standard of function and we can get past all this drama bullshit. I still say 64 megabyte blocks are bust. Bitcoin Cash has already proven they can do 32 on the regular, so why not raise the block size limit to 64? And on that point, Bitcoin Cash proves this every day, that despite the fact that the blocks could be 64 megabytes, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be full. Although I would think on the Bitcoin network itself that 128 megabytes would probably be better, as far as if we were to try to encapsulate all of the traffic that they want to do off-chain and still have room for people to do on-chain transactions economically. There should be the upper limit of, I would say, 128 to 256. There's no necessity, or there's nothing etched in stone saying that it's going to stay at 256 megabytes, or that we're ever going to fill 256 megabytes. The point of the block size limit, as far as I'm concerned, is just to give us a 2-day valuation, a right now valuation of what that transaction is going to cost according to the available block space right now. Now, again, over time, I would expect it to go up. And if we were really, really honest with ourselves about things like rate of adoption and actual use, there is, in my mind at least, no reason why we couldn't do on-chain and off-chain solutions and be able to make it for another 2 to 5 years on 256 megabytes as the upper limit. Now, if we get to the point where we're starting to occupy 100 megabytes of that upper limit there on the regular, we might consider upping it. I've always thought it made sense to do it as a extension of the halvening. We got one of those coming up in about a year and a half now. But every time there's a halvening, I believe because there's been a halvening of the block reward, that they should immediately be given double the amount of block space as the upper limit. So, back a while ago, it should have gone from 1 megabyte to 2 megabytes. And then on this last halvening, it should have gone from 2 megabytes to 4 megabytes. And then from 4 to 8, and then 8 to 16, and so on and so forth. And I think even on that kind of scale, that it would have been enough to be satiating the demand for block space from one halvening to the next. And again, there would be the potential for the miners to be just as compensated as they were previously. And so you wouldn't see the major jump in valuation of Bitcoin that we do, from, or should rather. Hey, Russell Powell. I gotta give this guy something, a little message here. Doing a live radio show right now. Smiley face. And then we'll go radio crypto.com. There we go. All right. So yeah, we're going to read Mr. Roubini's testimony because I think it's very important that we do try to face him on his terms and see exactly what the man has to say. Because I think that's one of the things that's probably getting lost in all of this back and forth, is that, and something that he's probably commenting on there, is that, he can tell by the way that people are responding to him and the things that they're saying to him that they haven't even read his shit yet. So we're going to read it. Testimony for the hearing of the U.S. Senate Committee on Banking, Housing, and Community Affairs on exploring the cryptocurrency and blockchain ecosystem. Crypto is the mother of all scams and now busted bubbles, while blockchain is the most overhyped technology ever, no better than spreadsheet/database Nouriel Roubini, Stern School of Business, New York University, October 2018. Let's see what Russ has to say. I can't get to that page. Yeah, just reload it, dude. Or look it up on Google, and it will give you a full link. Damn. Alright, so there we go. And so yeah, we're going to dive into the mind of Mr. Roubini as stated to the U.S. Senate Committee on Banking, Housing, and Community Affairs. Chairman Crapo, Ranking Member Brown, and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify today on the topic of cryptocurrency and blockchain ecosystem. My name is Nouriel Roubini, and I am a professor of economics at the Stern School of Business at the New York University. I am an expert of the global economy, international financial markets, asset and credit bubbles, and their bust, and the related financial crises. I was one of the few economists warning about and predicting in advance the global financial crisis of 2007 through 2009. I don't recall that. And I am one of the leading global scholars on the topic of bubbles and financial crises. My most recent book, Crisis Economics, a Crash Course in the Future of Finance, is a seminal treatise on the topic of asset bubbles and financial crises. I have written dozens of papers and other contributions on the topic of bubbles and their bust and the causes and consequences of financial crises. Crypto Bubble 2017, Crypto Apocalypse and Bust 2018. It is clear by now that Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies represent the mother of all bubbles, which explains why literally every human being I met between Thanksgiving and Christmas of 2017 asked me first if they should buy them. Especially folks with zero financial literacy. Individuals who could not tell the difference between stocks and bonds went into a literal manic frenzy of Bitcoin and crypto buying. Scammers, swindlers, criminals, charlatans, insider whales, and carnival barkers, all conflicted insiders, tapped into clueless retail investors. FOMO, fear of missing out, and took them for a ride, selling them and dumping on them scammy, crappy assets at the peak then went into a bust and a crash in a matter of months, like you have not seen in any history of financial bubbles. A chart of Bitcoin prices compared to other famous historical bubbles and scams like Tulip Mania, the Mississippi bubble, the South Sea bubble, shows that price increase of Bitcoin and other crypto junk coins was 2 to 3 times bigger than previous bubbles, and the ensuing collapse and bust as fast and furious and deeper. Bitcoin rapidly exploded in 2017 from 1,000 to 10,000 and then peaked at almost 20,000 in December of 2017, only to collapse below 6,000, down 70% from that peak, in a matter of 4 months, and it has been close to 6,000 since then. And a 70% capital loss was a, quote, good deal compared to thousands of altcoins, otherwise better known as shitcoins, that have lost on average 95% of their value since the peak. Actually calling this useless vaporware garbage a shitcoin is a grave insult to manure that is a most useful, precious, and productive good as fertilizer in agriculture. And litigation. Now that the crypto bloodbath is in full view and The new refuge of the crypto scoundrels is, quote, blockchain, the technology underlying crypto that is now alleged to be the cure of all global problems, including poverty, famines, and even diseases. But as discussed in detail below, blockchain is the most overhyped and least useful technology in human history. In practice, it is nothing better than a glorified spreadsheet or database. This man is demonstrating a clear lack of understanding of the difference between a database and a blockchain. What creates a database? You create a database. What creates a blockchain? A global network of miners mining the coin. See the difference? The entire cryptocurrency land has now gone into a crypto apocalypse, as the mother and father of all bubbles has now gone bust. Since the peak of the bubble late last year, Bitcoin has fallen about 70% in value, depending on the week, and that is generous. Other leading cryptocurrencies such as Ether, EOS, Litecoin, XRP have fallen by over 80% or more depending on the week, while thousands of other cryptocurrencies, literally scam coins and scam tokens, have fallen in value between 90 and 99%. No wonder, as a recent study showed that 81% of all ICOs were scams in the first place. 11% of them are dead or failing, while only 8% of them are traded in exchanges. And out of this 8%, the top 10 coins traded after Bitcoin have lost between 83 and 95% of their value since peak, with an average loss of over 90%. This is a true crypto apocalypse. No wonder that a recent study this week argued and concluded that the crypto industry is on the brink of an implosion. I just want to take a brief moment here to indicate that this man has absolutely no perspective with regard to this market. How many times have crypto OGs been through the fucking peak and trough? How many fucking times have you been through the peak and trough? If you haven't been here since 2013, 2014, this is your first peak and trough. And let me tell you something about the peak and trough. Number one, the peaks are always higher than they've ever been. And the trough is never as low as it was before. Now take a little bit of a moment there to really consider that. This effect has not gone away. It's been distorted through the introduction of stable coins and some of the other metrics that they use to gauge fiat currency. But that's neither here nor there. The effect, the rhythm is still there. It hasn't gone away. It's only diminished, and only for now. Crypto is not money, not scalable. To be a currency, Bitcoin or any cryptocurrency should be a serviceable unit of account, means of payment, and stable store of value. No, Mr. Roubini, wrong. Stable is not a consideration here. A store of value. That is all that's real relevant there. Stable is just a characterization that you stuck on it. It is none of these things. No one prices anything in Bitcoin. Few retailers accept it, and it is a poor store of value because its price can fluctuate by 20 to 30% in a single day. And since its price has been so unstable or volatile, almost no merchant will ever use it as a means of payment. The profit margin of any merchant can be wiped out in a matter of minutes. If he or she accepts Bitcoin or other cryptocurrency by the change in the dollar price of a cryptocurrency, proper means of payments need to have stable purchasing power. Otherwise, no one will ever use them. And let me just point out something here. I don't really have any hope of making it through this entire 37-page thing today. However, I'm going to comment the shit out of it. This thing here, the stable purchasing power, otherwise no one will ever use them. Okay, the US dollar has been declining in purchasing power since its inception. Since its inception, it's lost approximately 99% of its face value, or buying power, Mr. Roubini. So don't talk to me about fucking stable. And let's get something else straight here. The disbursement of Bitcoin is linear. Once every 10 minutes, more coins come onto the market. And now sometimes it comes in a little bit shorter than 10 minutes, and sometimes it's a little over 10 minutes. Point being, average 10 minutes, more coins are distributed. And it's a fixed number of coins that are distributed into the market. So if there is a volatility going on, it's usually because of an increase or decrease in demand, or something happening on the other side of the exchange rate. And this is a point that I will drive home like a fucking wooden stake through a vampire's heart, that 99% of the fucking quote-unquote volatility that you see versus fiat currencies on cryptocurrencies is due to fiat inflation and shit that is happening on the fiat side of the exchange rate. Something Mr. Roubini is completely fucking ignorant or oblivious of. Continuing on. As is typical of a financial bubble, investors were buying cryptocurrencies not to use in transactions, but because they expected them to increase in value. Indeed, if someone actually wanted to use Bitcoin, they would have a hard time doing so. It is so energy intensive and environmentally toxic to produce, and carries such high transaction costs that even Bitcoin conferences do not accept it as a valid form of payment. Paying $55 of transaction costs to buy a $2 cup of coffee is obviously never going to lead Bitcoin to become a transaction currency. And to that point, Mr. Roubini, that is an issue that is being caused because some assholes decided that Bitcoin was a quote-unquote store of value and not in fact a currency. And they are wrong. That's why the transactions have gone precipitously downward in volume. Continuing on. Until now, Bitcoin's only real use has been to facilitate illegal activities such as drug transactions, tax evasion, avoidance of capital controls, or money laundering. Aha! Aha! Avoidance of capital controls. What's a capital control? It's saying you can't have money while everybody else can have money. Yes, we want to circumvent your fucking capital controls, asshole. And money laundering, rather. Not surprisingly, G20 member states are now working together to regulate cryptocurrencies and eliminate the anonymity they supposedly afford by requiring that all income or capital gains generated transactions be reported. Fuck you. Even the U.S. Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin has publicly stated that we cannot allow cryptocurrencies to become the next Swiss bank account. Dude, you don't have any choice in the matter. You don't have any choice in the matter. If the market says they want to use Bitcoin, they will use Bitcoin. If the market says they want to use Monero, they will use Monero. If the market says they want to use Vergecoin, they will use Vergecoin. And you will not have any choice in the matter. Continuing on, except for what you use. That's the extent of your choice. Continuing on. Since the invention of money, thousands of years ago, there's never been a monetary system with hundreds of different currencies operating alongside one another. Yeah, I know, that's what makes it so fucking wonderful. The entire point of money is that it allows parties to transact without having to barter. But for money to have value and to generate economies of scale, only so many currencies can operate at the same time. No. You are incorrect, sir. As many currencies as are necessary. And that will be what is necessary will be defined by the market, not by you, not by the Federal Reserve, not by anybody in Congress, not anybody in China. No. By the market. Me. I am the market. You are the market. I am the invisible hand. In the U.S., the reason we do not use euros or yen in addition to dollars is obvious. Doing so would be pointless, and it would make the economy far less efficient. That's incorrect, sir. If we were allowed to transact in whichever currency we wanted to, the average U.S. business would be doing much better than it is right now, being restricted solely to Federal Reserve notes. The reason we don't is because we're kind of prohibited from doing so by the regulatory lag in having to change over from one currency to another. Continuing on. The idea that hundreds of cryptocurrencies could viably operate together not only contradicts the very concept of money with a single numeraire that can be used for the price discovery of relative price of thousands of goods, it is utterly idiotic as the use of multiple numeraires is like the Stone Age of barter before money was created. No, sir, you're incorrect again. It is just like America was about a century ago, when there were thousands of fucking currencies being transacted. The idea that tagline, and you've probably heard it somewhere before. Your money is no good here. It has multiple meanings. Your money is no good here means that basically you could get by on your credibility alone with us. Okay, that's one. Your money is no good here is also the particular script or currency that you're attempting to pay in is not accepted at that particular place of business. That it has an origin. Okay, the practice of biting coins, that was because at one point or another gold was being circulated as money, real money. As a matter of fact, paper currency is a relatively new invention. Anyway, continuing on. Supply of crypto is massive. Bitcoin is deflationary. Yes, it is. But so too is the idea that even a single cryptocurrency could substitute for fiat money. Cryptocurrencies have no intrinsic value, nor do fiat currencies, whereas fiat currencies certainly do. That's bullshit, Mr. Roubini. Because they can be used to pay taxes. Dude, are you fucking kidding me? Okay, here. This can't be the full extent of your conceptual difference between a real currency and fiat currencies. It really can't. Listen to this again. Okay. Cryptocurrencies have no intrinsic value, whereas fiat currencies certainly do, because it can be used to pay taxes. Fiat currencies are legal tender and can be used and are used to buy any good or service, and they can be used to pay for tax liabilities. They are also protected from value debasement by central banks. Oh my god, who are the biggest fucking debasers of currencies? Central banks! Jesus Christ, Roubini. No fucking wonder they're executing you on fucking crypto Twitter. You have, I don't know, I can't believe you teach economics. I cannot believe you teach economics. I really can't. If you have a student that is learning economics from this man, you should probably pull your kid out of that school, because they are letting a fucking lunatic or somebody who does not understand or is at least completely misrepresenting reality here teaching your kid economics. Where it pertains to cryptocurrencies, none of what this guy is saying is true. Central banks debase fiat currencies. They print more of them into existence. The chief counterfeiter of fiat currencies is central banks. And if you doubt me at all on this, please go to YouTube, look up central banking. You will find a bazillion freaking videos on the subject. And even in the quote-unquote legitimate explanations of what the central banks do, you will find in there where they more or less say straight out that they just create money out of thin air. You will find it. They can't avoid telling you that. Because it's no longer backed by gold. There was a point where the paper currency in your wallet, and it wasn't long ago. I mean, we're talking about less than a century. There was a point where you could take your US dollars and you could take them to the window and you can hand them the US dollars and they would give you gold. And there was a fixed exchange rate between the IOUs that you circulated on a daily basis and ounces of gold. There was also a period where you could do that with silver in some of the western states because they had a shit ton of silver. Anyway, point being is coins and paper currencies were circulated as quote-unquote money in the economy back then and interchangeable for one another. That built the entire trust in the concept of paper money. And then one day, they closed the gold windows. And you could no longer take those units, those paper certificates in your pocket, those IOUs in your pocket, you could no longer take them to the window and exchange them for their face value in gold. And just a side note on that, if you read through Blockstream's paper on Liquid, they exchange your Bitcoin for liquid Bitcoin, which is an abstraction of value. And as we discussed on the last episode, the whole reason for circulating abstractions instead of the thing of value is so you can debase the volume of the thing of value that you supposedly marshal control over. That is how central banks counterfeit fiat currencies. Continuing on, I don't know if I can really take all of this. I'm almost positive we're not going to make it through 37 pages of this lunacy. I'm just telling you that right now. I'm going to make an attempt, but I don't think we're going to make it. Continuing on, debasement by they're also protected from value debasement by central banks, committed to price stability, and if a fiat currency loses credibility, as in some weak monetary systems with high inflation. Gosh, Mr. Roubini, where does the high inflation come from? It will be swapped out for more stable foreign fiat currencies like the dollar or the euro, or real assets such as real estate, equities, and possibly gold. Fiat money also is not created out of thin air. These liabilities of a central bank, such as the Fed, are backed by Fed assets. Their holdings of short-term and longer-term treasury securities that have near AAA sovereign credit status in the U.S., and holding of foreign reserves including gold and other stable foreign currencies. The usual crypto critique of fiat currencies that can be debased via inflation is nonsense. Wait a minute. The usual crypto critique of fiat currencies that can be debased via inflation is nonsense. For the last 30 years, commitment to inflation targeting in advanced economies and most emerging markets has led to price stability. the 2% inflation target of most central banks. And for the last decade, the biggest problem of central banks has been achieving the inflation target of 2% after the GFC has become extremely difficult, as in spite of unconventional monetary policies, the inflation rate has systematically undershot its 2% target. Dude, I don't know what metric you're using to gauge fiat inflation, but I can tell you this, just judging by the Jimmy Dean sausage sandwich that I fucking eat in the morning, I can tell you that the volume of it has shrunk significantly from when I decided that I wanted to eat the first one. I want to say they've lost about 15 to 20% of their total volume, and probably another 10-15% in their constituency, meaning that they're not all of what was there before. Continuing on. So yeah, I think your 2% number is bullshit. Instead, 99.9% of all cryptocurrencies instead have no backing whatsoever of any sort and have no intrinsic value of any sort. And even the so-called, quote, stable coins have only partial backing at best, with true US dollar reserves, or like Tether, most likely no backing at all, as there has never been a proper audit of their accounts. Gosh, who does that sound like? There's never been a proper audit of their accounts. Maybe if I thought really hard about that. The Fed, as a matter of fact, yeah. You know, Ron Paul, one of the things that he tried to achieve during the 30 years he was in Congress, and he never did actually achieve this, was he tried to pass a bill to get a full audit of the Federal Reserve's books by a third party, by the way. That has never been achieved. You know, I thought about this earlier today, and I am starting to think that Tether is being run by the Federal Reserve or a central bank that's connected to the Federal Reserve. Think about it. It's pegged supposedly 1-to-1 with US dollars. Supposedly. Despite all of the accusations, they have never, ever been prosecuted. They've been subpoenaed, but they've never been prosecuted. They're allowed on exchanges, on regulated exchanges even, and yet there's never been any real attempt to try and bring them to account. So, you know, there's never been any real attempt to bring the Federal Reserve to account. Oh no, I'm sorry. There was one attempt, but then Nixon got shot in the head, and that kind of ended. But yeah. So there you go. I'm starting to think Tether is being run by the Federal Reserve. Continuing on. As it happens, Bitcoin's supposed advantage is also its Achilles heel. Because even if it actually did have a steady state supply of 21 million units, that would disqualify it as a viable currency. And here, Mr. Roubini, again, wrong. There is not a total supply of 21 million right now. 21 million is the total supply that will ever be mined. And that process will take 140 years, or about actually 130 now. So, yeah, roughly, supposedly. I mean, it might run out before then, but we don't know. Supposedly, it's meant to run 140 years before it runs out of mining Bitcoin. And the total number of units that will ever be mined is 21 million. I think in circulation right now is somewhere between, I haven't looked it up in a little bit, but I want to say it's something like somewhere between 15 and 17 million. But yeah, that it'll shrink over time because it's deflationary, as you pointed out earlier. Unless the supply of a currency tracks potential nominal GDP, prices will undergo deflation. Yeah, that they're supposed to. When a company makes an augmentation to their manufacturing process to cut costs, That's supposed to actually save them money. You're not supposed to fucking steal the differential by inflating the number of US dollars that are in circulation so that they never experience that liquid savings. Asshole. That means if a steady state supply of Bitcoin really did gradually replace a fiat currency, the price index of all goods and services would continuously fall. By extension, any nominal debt contract denominated in Bitcoin would rise in real value over time, leading to the kind of debt deflation that economist Irving Fisher believed precipitated the Great Depression. At the same time, nominal wages in Bitcoin would increase forever in real terms, regardless of productivity growth, adding further to the likelihood of an economic disaster. Actually, that's not correct, sir. As things would be more efficient over time, they would cost less in actual physical labor and materials. Continuing on. Worse, cryptocurrencies in general are based on a false premise. According to its promoters, Bitcoin has a steady state supply of 21 million units, so it cannot be debased like fiat currencies. But that claim is clearly fraudulent, considering that it has already forked off into several branches of spin-offs. Mr. Roubini, this too, again, is where you don't understand what the fuck you're talking about. When a coin forks, like from Bitcoin to Bitcoin and then Bitcoin Cash, it doesn't increase its value. Like the people that had coins on the Bitcoin blockchain before the split, they'll get an equal number of Bitcoin Cash, but that's it. The rest of the time, though, they are actually two separate units. They're not counted on one another's blockchain as a value. Continuing on. And Bitcoin Gold, ditto for the various forks and spin-off of Ether from the Ethereum cartel. It took a century for Coca-Cola to create the new Coke and call the old one Coke Classic. But it took 3 years for Ethereum to pump the first Ethereum into Ethereum Classic and create and brand a brand new spin-off Ethereum. What? Dude, weird. Moreover, he might have actually tried to explain the fork there, but yeah, I don't think he was successful. Moreover, hundreds of other cryptocurrencies are invented every day, alongside scams known as initial coin offerings, which are mostly designed to skirt securities laws. And their supply is created and debased every day by pure fiat in the most arbitrary way. So, cryptocurrencies are creating crypto money supply and debasing it at a much faster pace than any major bank ever has. No wonder that the average cryptocurrency has lost 95% of its value in a matter of a year. At least in the case of Bitcoin, the increase in supply is controlled by a rigorous mining process, and the supply is capped at the limit to 21 million Bitcoins. Instead, most other altcoins, starting with the leading Ethereum, have an arbitrary supply that was created via pre-mining and pre-sale. That's not correct either. And the change of supply of that and thousands of other cryptocurrencies is now subject to arbitrary decision of self-appointed quote central bankers. Yes, I am Janet Yellen. Hold on one second here. Yes, we are self-appointed central bankers. That on that point, you are correct, sir. However, if you have spent any time reading white papers, one of the things you notice in the white paper is if they're honest. You know, if it's a legitimate coin, it will have things like an upper limit on the number of coins that will ever be created. And that's because Bitcoin set this standard. Now, not all coins actually follow this, but that's why you have to do your homework, and you have to educate yourself on these things before you do invest. But like with Verge, I think it's like 16.4 billion that will ever be created, that will ever be mined. Okay, and that I think that's a misconception this guy has. There are several ICOs though that do have the feature that the devs or a group of devs or a group of some grouping or another has the final decision as to whether or not they will create new units, and that they have that capability whenever. And so that to some extent is true in Mr. Roubini's review here. But that's not a trait that is exclusive or that's involved in every coin. It's a trait that if you do read the white paper, if you do read the information, you will find out. Most coins explicitly state whether or not they have a coin cap. And something to pay attention to. And oh wow, we're gonna get into the best part of or what looks like the best part of this after the music break. But I'm feeling a need for a little more caffeine. So anyway, let's go ahead and throw down into some music for a little bit here. And I'm feeling some Cavalier Conspiracy, Inflicted, here on Coin Metal. And that was Sixth with Part of the Friction. And we're going to have to skulk right back into the head of Mr. Roubini and get back into this thing, because, we're going to make an honest effort. And it seems like we're actually getting into a part where he might be communicating some actual truth to us. I'll try not to laugh as much this time around. Let's see here. Arbitrary decision of self-appointed bankers. And the biggest scam of all is the case of, quote, stable coins, starting with Tether, that claim to be pegged 1-to-1 to the US dollar, but are not fully collateralized by an equal backing of true US dollars. Bitfinex, behind the scammy Tether, has persistently refused to be properly audited, and its creation of fiat Tether has been systematically used to prop up, manipulate upward the price of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, according to a recent academic paper. Whatever. Financial crises occurred well before fiat currencies and central banking, and are now less virulent thanks to central banks and fiat money. Another totally false argument is that asset and credit bubbles are caused by central banks and the existence of fiat currencies. Actually, that's not the argument. The argument is that central banks create the credit bubbles and subsequent credit droughts by their own policies. And that's what makes fiat currencies less appealing by comparison to cryptocurrencies, which are not ruled by a group of 13 guys. Anyway, continuing on. Well, in the best cases aren't. Some of them actually are, so you gotta watch out for your own bunghole, do your homework. You know the drill. Any student of financial crises knows that asset and credit bubbles were widespread before fiat currencies and central banks were created. Yeah, and they also, central banks also have not gotten past the worst practices that caused those issues. Continuing on. See, for example, Tulip Mania, the Mississippi Bubble, and South Sea Bubble. These bubbles and their busts were frequent, virulent, and had massive economic and financial costs, including severe recessions, deflations, defaults, and financial crises. I think those are all financial crises, dude. Central banks instead were initially created not to provide goods price stability, but rather to provide financial stability and avoid the destructive bank, sovereign, and currency runs that do occur when bubbles go bust. Indeed, the Fed was created in 1913 when the last of many bubbles gone bust that had caused massive bank runs led to the realization that an institution that could provide with lender of last resort to the financial system was needed. That and the creation of deposit insurance after the Great Depression is the reason why bank runs are so rare. Bullshit. They just don't happen in the same place every time. But that's because they're being managed by the central banks all over the planet. Anyway, continuing on. And the purpose of fiat currencies, whose supply is regulated by credible and independent central banks, is to reduce the frequency, virulence, and severity of economic recessions, deflations, and asset and credit bubbles gone bust. And indeed, the economic and financial history of U.S. and other countries shows that severe economic recessions, depressions, deflations, and financial crises are less frequent and less costly after the creation of fiat currencies and central banks. Dude, were you around for the 2009 crisis or 2008 crisis? Were you actually like participating in markets back then? Because all that shit was regulated. Yeah. Anyway, continuing on. And I would say caused by policies of the Fed, i.e. the central bank. Continuing on. Cryptocurrencies instead have not and will never have the tools to pursue economic and financial stability. Yeah, that's right. We leave it up to the fucking market to decide what it's worth. It's not up to us to determine what it's worth to them. Continuing. The few like Bitcoin whose supply is truly constrained by an arbitrary mathematical rule will never be able to stabilize recessions, deflations, and financial crises. They will rather lead to permanent and pernicious deflation. Yeah, that's right. While the rest, 99%, have an arbitrary supply generation mechanism that is worse than any fiat currency. No, this isn't correct. Some ICOs have arbitrary creation of units. Some ICOs. That has nothing to do with altcoins or other... Yeah, never mind. Continuing. They will rather be tools of massive financial instability if their use were to become widespread. They're already global, dude. That's too late. The real revolution of financial services is fintech, and it has nothing to do with blockchain or crypto. That's not true either. Where do you think the word fintech came from, asshole? It came from us. The financial services industry has been undergoing a revolution driven by Bitcoin. But the driving force is not overhyped blockchain applications such as Bitcoin. It is a revolution built on artificial intelligence, big data, and the Internet of Things. I'm sorry, I said I would try not to laugh as much. Already thousands of real businesses are using these technologies to disrupt every aspect of financial intermediation. Dozens of online payment systems, PayPal, Venmo, Square, and so forth, have hundreds of millions of daily users in the U.S. Billions more use similar low-cost, efficient digital payment systems all over the world. Alipay, which it looks like he misspelled, and WeChat Pay in China, UPI-based systems in India, M-Pesa in Kenya and Africa, and financial institutions are making precise lending decisions in seconds rather than weeks, thanks to the wealth of online data on individuals and firms. With time, such data-driven improvements in credit allocation could even eliminate cyclical credit-driven booms and busts. Similarly, insurance underwriting, claims assessment and management, and fraud monitoring have all become faster and more precise. And actively managed portfolios are increasingly being replaced by passive robo-advisors which can perform just as well or better than conflicted high-fee financial advisors. Now, compare this real and ongoing fintech revolution that has nothing to do with blockchain or cryptocurrencies with a record of blockchain, which has existed for almost a decade and still only has one failing and imploding application, cryptocurrencies. Buterin's inconsistent trinity: crypto is not scalable, is not decentralized, is not secure. There is a deeper fundamental flaw and inconsistency in the crypto blockchain space. As Vitalik Buterin correctly wrote a while ago, there is a fundamental inconsistent trinity in blockchain. You cannot have at the same time scalability, decentralization, and security. Actually, you're wrong. Participation increases decentralization, which scales the network and adds security. It's because people have talked about these things in separate contexts that people like you misunderstand. Continuing on. Bitcoin, for example, is partially decentralized, even if its mining is now massively centralized, but it is not scalable given its proof-of-work POW authentication mechanism that only allows for 5 to 7 transactions a second. And it is secure so far, but at the cost of no scalability, and that's incorrect too. And since its mining is now massively centralized, incorrect as well, as an oligopoly of miners is now controlling mining, its security is at risk. And again, Mr. Roubini, that is incorrect. Look at the fucking hash scale, or a chart of the hash rate on the Bitcoin network over time. You will notice that it is doing one thing. It is increasing. And it's not just increasing because Bitmain is putting more machines online. It's because other people are putting more miners online. More people. And that's everywhere. And it's not just in warehouses. And it's not just in massive complexes of warehouses. It's in people's fucking garages. Still. This is a fact that you and Mr. Buterin in his statement don't really count as part of reality, but it is in fact true. Continuing on. Supporters of crypto have been promising forever, Buterin spoke of proof of stake in 2013, systems that are vastly scalable, but leaving aside that proof of stake is not live yet. Oh, bullshit! There's plenty of proof of stake coins yet out there, dude. And Ethereum is still based on proof of work. Oh, I'm sorry, you're talking about specifically with regard to proof of stake on Ethereum. Yeah, it's because you want to know why he hasn't made the change? It's because he can't get enough of the miners to say, yeah, we'll do this the proof of stake coin, yeah. He has a hard enough time getting them to agree to reward reductions, which we've seen them actually successfully do, amazingly enough. Continuing on, let's see. Ethereum is still based on proof of work. The reality is that once proof of stake is properly launched, it will be massively centralized and thus not secure. The whole logic of proof of stake is to give greater voting power to those who have a stake in a coin, those who own it own the most of it and mine it the most. But that leads to a massive centralization problem. And no, only if the mining is restricted from other people. Continuing on. Even Bitcoin that is based on proof of work has seen a massive centralization and concentration of mining power in a small oligopolistic group. And that is incorrect as well. The reason why there have been concentrations of Bitcoin has been because of incentives. If in China they make the shit and they aren't trying to strangle the shit and there's cheap electricity, they will do the shit there. Now, we've seen where China has started to not be such a comfy position for people to have their warehouses full of miners. And that centralization issue that a lot of people have bitched about over time is slowly going away. It's going away because there are incentives to mine in particular areas outside of China. And so that removes the physical centralization aspect as a big issue. We've seen a lot of mining operations going into Canada, and a lot of them going into rural America, something that you guys underreport. Continuing on. Yeah. Let's see. Massive centralization. The problem of concentration of mining power among oligopoly becomes much worse with proof of stake, as those with greater initial stake, and Ethereum is massively concentrated on ownership of Ethereum, will get a greater stake over time. So the problems of oligopolistic centralization of mining power that is already very serious in proof of work will become exponentially worse in proof of stake. And one assumption there, Mr. Roubini, is that you're assuming that they will maintain their stake as they collect it, which would in fact cause the centralization risk that you're talking about. However, the whole point of cryptocurrencies is being able to move monetary value from one party to another without the introduction of a third party or arbitrating intermediary. And that being the case, sometimes you got to cash out. Sometimes you want to spend your cryptocurrency as money. And when you do that, you lose some of your stake. Continuing on. More generally, while cryptography scientists are busy inventing every day another consensus mechanism, and there are dozens of new ones after proof of work and proof of stake and their variant, the reality is that Buterin's inconsistent trinity, it will never be possible to create a consensus mechanism that is scalable while also being decentralized and secure. And there too, you are incorrect, sir. If there is an issue with the centralization or the scalability of one, people will create another and use it instead. If it is preferable to use it over other ones, other people will switch to it as well. That's how it goes. Anyway, continuing on. One solution to the problem of scalability is to use many altcoins rather than increasing the block size of each blockchain, but that solution is highly inefficient and is not secure. That's bullshit too. A second solution is to increase the block size, but then nodes running on a smaller computer or laptop would drop out of the system as they will not be able to store every transaction or state. And that too is incorrect. So you would end up relying on a small number of supercomputers for running the blockchain. So you end up with an oligopoly with market power, concentration, and lack of security. I've talked about this multiple times on this show. The market is reflecting the current incentive structure. It is currently incentivized for people to be doing their mining in China. It is currently incentivized for them to do it in really lower temperature areas, like the Arctic or in other parts, or Canada. Canada's cold. There's incentives involved in doing that. I don't think this guy's spent all that much time thinking about the economics of mining. And as a matter of fact, it's misreported a lot. And I'm kind of pissed about that, honestly, because it's one of those things where it makes cryptocurrencies useful to people for them to be able to participate in the process of mining them. When you mine, you get the full thing. You understand the full thing. You get the shit from your mining. You get paid, if assuming, of course, you're actually finding blocks on the mining pool that you're with. But you get the reward for having put forward the effort. Anyway, continuing on. One solution to the problem of scalability is to use many altcoins rather than increasing the block size. Blah blah blah. We already did that one. So you would end up relying on a small number of supercomputers for running the blockchain, so you end up with an oligopoly with market power. And a third solution is where most of the crypto industry is trying to go, i.e. merge mining and variant proof of stake. In the system, there are many chains, but all such chains share the same mining power or stake. This approach increases the computational and storage demands on each miner by a massive factor that most miners will not be able to support. So this solution is a backdoor way of increasing the size of blocks. Thus, it leads to only very few powerful miners to participate into this proof of stake, i.e. participating in merge mining each chain. So it leads again to centralization, oligopolies of mining, and thus lack of security. And on that point, Mr. Roubini, I would like to say that that is that would be a danger if, in fact, coins were going to be doing merge mining in the way that you're talking about. There are other dangers involved in the scenario that you've laid out, though. And as a matter of fact, we're experiencing that on the Bitcoin network right now, where 80% of the network is basically just telling court, no, we're not going to fucking update to your fucking shit. What would that do to all of the coins that are being merge mined with Bitcoin? They're faced with that choice too. You know, are we going to upgrade, or are we going to side with 80% of the network that's basically not upgrading? Yeah. Anyway, continuing on. Whichever way you try to slice it, blockchain leads to centralization and lack of security. That's not true at all. That's reflected currently right now. If you were to change anything about the incentive structure like this, if we were to make the max block size 256 megabytes, your grandmother would be digging around for old cell phones to fucking use to try and mine it. Why? Because there would be that many more transactions on the network. And that little throughput constraint that you were talking about, that 5 to 7 megabytes, that goes away. Because Bitcoin works on a 10-minute block interval, right? So when you're saying 5 to 7 transactions per second, you're counting the total number of transactions that happen over that 10-minute period, and then dividing it by the number of seconds in 10 minutes. And that's where you're getting 5 to 7 transactions. So if you increase the block size by 256 times, you multiply the number of transactions that can be facilitated per second by 256. See how that works? The issues that Bitcoin is experiencing with scalability right now is due to lack of participation. And it's because the incentive structure to participate has been vastly distorted with this 1 megabyte block size limit. If that were to change, and I'm assuming it probably will in the not so distant future, if it were to go up to what I'm talking about, between 64 and 256 megabytes, all of that bullshit would go away. All the oligopolistic concentration of power that you're talking about, and the resulting lack of security, that you're absolutely right, would be introduced by that concentration of power, is no longer a danger. The scalability is no longer an issue, because everybody and their fucking brother would be motivated to be mining. Everybody that's, every once in a while they look over in their closet and they see the mining hardware that they're not running right now, they'd be firing that shit up. I know I would. Continuing on. With the centralization of power comes a serious problem of lack of security, starting with 51% attacks. Oh my god, a kernel of truth. Supporters of crypto argue that it would not be in the interest of an oligopoly of miners to start a 51% attack, as it would destroy their source of income / fees. But leaving aside that such an attack would allow them to steal the underlying assets, worth in some cases dozens of billions of dollars, as in the case of Bitcoin, The main problem is any oligopolistic cartel would end up behaving like an oligopoly. I hate that word now. Using its market power to jack up prices, fees for transactions, and increase its profit margins. Yeah, and everybody else that's currently holding Bitcoin too when they sell or buy or whatever. Continuing on. Indeed, as concentration of mining has increased over the last year, transaction costs of crypto as measured by miners' fees divided by number of transactions have skyrocketed. Yeah, due to the alteration of the incentive structure. No security in cryptocurrencies. So even proof of work that is not scalable leads to concentration/centralization and thus lack of security. No, incorrect. Proof of stake and other authentication mechanisms that are scalable are much worse. Bigger concentrated oligopolistic cartels and thus lack of security. Also, 51% attacks are not a theoretic possibility that is impossible to practice. Dozens of successful 51% attacks have occurred recently. In smaller coins with a small market capitalization, you don't even need a 51% hash power to mount a successful 51% attack. And since market cap is low, a few hundred of thousands of dollars, or at best a couple of millions, are sufficient to mount a successful 51% attack whose gain is 10 to 20 times multiple the cost of the attack. No wonder that dozens of successful 51% attacks have occurred recently against smaller cryptocurrencies. Yes, that is true. Fundamental flaws of lack of security in crypto land in... That's... Jesus Christ, dude. You really should have read this thing aloud. I think you did a lot of self-correction along the way. Fundamental flaws of lack of security in crypto land go well beyond the fact that mining is highly concentrated in oligopolies in shady and non-transparent and unsecure jurisdictions. China, Russia, Belarus, Georgia, etc. It also goes beyond the possibility and reality of massive and regular 51% attacks. There's a deeper and more fundamental set of security flaws in crypto land. Conventional payment systems based on fiat currencies, central banks and private banks, are scalable and secure but centralized. So they resolve Buterin's inconsistent Trinity principle by giving up decentralization and relying on trusted permission authorities to resolve the double spend problem. And and on that, you're incorrect, sir. They're all relying on the FDIC to counterbalance any bad actors fucking off all of their reserves and having to come back with their fucking handout. So no, you're incorrect. It's a matter of trust. They trust that that's a reality, that the FDIC will back any kind of fucking bad issue up to $250,000 or whatever their upper max limit really is, and keep everybody solvent. And we don't have that assurance in cryptocurrencies. It's part of the gamble. It's part of the chance we take. Continuing on. Instead, blockchains and cryptocurrencies not only are not scalable and are massively centralized, they are massively not secure. When I use traditional financial systems based on fiat currencies, there are many levels and layers of security, i.e. trust. Firstly, I rely on institutions with a reputation and credibility built over time. Yeah, they haven't fucked you over yet, or they haven't fucked you over in a way that directly impacted you because somebody else was willing to insure their fuck-ups. Continuing on. Institutions. There's also deposit insurance and guarantees the value of my deposits. No, they don't. They don't guarantee the value of your deposits. They only guarantee the volume of your deposits. Difference. There is a lender of last resort role of central bank to avoid runs on solvent but illiquid banks. Sometimes even there is the bailout of systemically important, too big to fail institutions. Why are they systemically important if they're failing despite their size? Really, dude? I mean, just because the leech on your back is the size of one of your appendages, does that mean you should keep it on your back, or should you look to excise it? Continuing on. With provisos to control this TBTF moral hazard. More importantly, a depositor or credit card holder is made whole with little effort when fraudulent transactions occur and someone tries to steal your money or make a fraudulent charge on your credit card. Yeah, whatever. They still got the shit, didn't they? Somebody is still out something, aren't they? Just because somebody's willing to, delete it off of their fucking books doesn't mean it didn't happen and there wasn't a material loss. Society pays a small fee in a number of ways to ensure such safety, but depositors and credit card holders are happy to pay such a modest fee in exchange for transaction security. Actually, we're not given a choice in the matter. The bank just charges us. So while many breaches of security may occur, as there are main weak points in the system, i.e. centralization, the system is secure and individual users of the system are also secure. No. Just because you're able to stick your finger in the hole every time a leak pops out doesn't mean that the leaks aren't popping out and that you aren't fucking hemorrhaging. In cryptoland, instead, there are none of these institutions that provide security. Yeah, and we don't have to pay the cost for that security either. The cost that we do pay for the security is derived from mining. Or imposed by mining, rather. No deposit insurance, no lender of last resort backstop. Yeah, right. We're going without a tightrope, or without a net here on the tightrope. No insurance of hacked and stolen funds, and the breaches of security are massive and escalating. Yeah, happening at central points of failure, i.e. exchanges, most of which are actually regulated. It is now clear that while Bitcoin has not been hacked yet, the centralized exchanges that hold the cryptocurrencies of millions of depositors can be and have been hacked on a regular scale. Oh, good, Mr. Roubini. Thank you. And once your crypto assets are stolen, they vanish in the vast anonymous void of crypto and cannot be found and retrieved anymore. The vast hacking of centralized exchanges has led to the development of dozens of decentralized exchanges, DEX, but 99% of all trading is on centralized exchanges, and some security flaws of DEX imply that even the so-called, quote, secure DEX are not secure at all. Once a hacker steals your private key, whether it is stored on an online wallet, laptop, phone, computer, or tablet, or centralized exchange, your crypto wealth is stolen and gone forever. However, that's not true either. Where you're complaining about the money itself being gone, if the exchange, in fact, remains operational and has enough liquidity to stay so, oftentimes they find a way to make their customers whole. As a matter of fact, I was on Bitfinex when they experienced their hack, and their method of making their customers whole was directly impacted me, where I got some fucking, a Bitfinex coin or whatever. I can't remember what it was, BFX or something like that. I actually made enough money on that to make myself whole over time. So yeah, dude, this idea that your wealth is stolen and gone forever, in some cases it has been. When Cryptsy was hacked, I lost a significant chunk of the money that I'd made there. And that was my fault for keeping it on Cryptsy. But I never signed up with Cryptsy with the assumption that I was going to be whole every minute. there was in the back of my mind the reality that I could experience a material loss by doing this. But I'll tell you what, I've been not actually experiencing need for quite a while now, and that's an important step forward for me. Continuing on. Let's see. Given these massive security problems of crypto, the solutions to these severe security problems are all variants of going back to the Stone Age. Do not put your long private key that no human can memorize ever on a digital device, but rather write it down on a piece of paper and hide it in a hole where hopefully no one will find it, or no insect or rat will destroy it. Or spend a fortune to put your crypto assets into, quote, cold storage, i.e. a digital storage that is disconnected from anything online. The latter is the Stone Age equivalent of hiding your wealth into deep caves that cannot be found by anyone. Actually, there are really modern ways to take care of that, but I'm not going to talk about them here because some asshole will try and figure out a hack to get around it. Let's see. But leaving aside the cost of such Stone Age security solutions, the implication becomes that your crypto wealth, hidden in deep cold storage, cannot be easily traded or used for transactions of any sort. That's not true either. This is the contemporary equivalent of mining gold deep from the ground and then holding it in the form of gold ingots back deep in the ground. And it's kind of funny that you should be bagging on that, dude, because that's exactly what Iraq was going to do before we invaded. That's exactly what Libya was going to do before we invaded. Continuing on. Even such security solutions are not safe. Criminals who know that access to your private key is access to your entire crypto wealth forever are now specializing into gunpoint robberies of crypto investors and whales, also known as crypto robberies. At gunpoint, you are forced to provide your private key, and then your wealth is gone for good. No wonder that crypto conferences have entire sessions devoted to secure and insecure crypto assets. Mm-hmm. Traditional banking systems have found secure solutions to such criminal security problems. Even if a robber forces you at gunpoint to reveal the PIN of your ATM card, the amount of cash that can be withdrawn is limited to a small amount. Similarly, wire transfer of a significant size are subject to various forms of identity verification. Oh, there is no way that your entire wealth can be stolen with a click, as it happens daily in crypto land. While crypto relies on Stone Age technologies that cannot even resolve such security problems. That's not true at all. Decentralization is a self-serving ideology. Blockchain's ideology is politically born out of the same mentality as libertarian right-wing conspiracies or extreme left anarchism. All governments, central banks, monies, institutions, banks, corporations, entities with reputation and credibility built over centuries are evil, centralized concentrations of power that literally need to be destroyed. No. We want to reintroduce ourselves into the interest structure. The interest structure that we've been systematically cut off from by regulations and IP controls, i.e. machinations of centralized corporations, centralized banks, and governments. So, the utopian crypto future will be one of libertarian decentralization of all economic activity, transactions, and human interactions. Everything will end up on publicly decentralized, distributed, permissionless trustless ledgers, or better, millions of ledgers on computers that are already consuming more energy than Canada to verify and confirm transactions without the use of evil, centralized institutions. Yep, that's it. This extreme right-wing ideology of crypto has been studied in detail in the academic book by David Gumbulia, The Politics of Bitcoin, Software as Right-Wing Extremism. No. Software as personal sovereignty and position. But the reality is just the opposite. A bunch of self-serving, greedy white men, very few women or minorities are allowed in the blockchain space. That too is bullshit, Mr. Roubini. This shit is global. You don't really have a choice about the desire to participate with certain individuals. It's kind of global. Very few women or minorities are allowed in the blockchain space. Bullshit. Have pretended to create billions of wealth out of nowhere while pretending to care about billions of poor and unbanked humans around the world. It is a total pretense, as Cryptoland is the most centralized scam in human history, where greed for Lambos and ostentatious consumption is greater than any Gordon Gekko ever. That's not true either. There are hundreds of stories of greedy crypto criminals raising billions of dollars with scammy white papers that are nothing but vaporware, and then literally stealing these billions to buy Lambos, expensive cars, villas in the Caribbean, and the French Riviera. These large-scale criminals stealing dozens of billions make the small and petty Wolf of New York robbing small investors a criminal penny stock manipulation scheme look like an amateur. But the most shameful of such near criminals is a crypto guru that was formally investigated for pedophilia and who has put his home and operation together with a group of crypto scammers in Puerto Rico after a devastating hurricane that killed thousands and nearly destroyed the island. Under the flatulent pretense of wanting to help the millions who lost homes and their livelihood to the hurricane by using, quote, blockchain and new crappy cryptocurrencies, these literal bloodsuckers live in super luxury mega mansions in the island and use the island's tax laws to enrich themselves and avoid paying their federal taxes. They are emblematic of a widespread crypto culture that shamelessly pretends to care about the billions of poor and unbanked just to enrich itself. At least the Wolf of New York had no pretense of wanting to save the world and end global poverty and the tragic misery of Puerto Rico devastated by a hurricane. Decentralization is a myth. Massive centralization and concentration of oligopolistic power and cartels among miners, exchanges, developers, wealth holders. Yeah, sounds like a lot of bullshit. The reality is one of a massive centralization of power among miners, exchanges, developers, and wealth holders, the total opposite of the lie of a decentralized system. Actually, that's entirely bullshit. There is nothing preventing you from mining. There is nothing preventing you from being a developer. There is nothing preventing you, other than governments, from participating in every layer of the cryptosphere. The barriers that Mr. Roubini himself imagines are themselves reflections of society's own bias. The bias is still against intelligence and nerds. That's not an issue that we are imposing upon the cryptosphere. As I said, this shit is global. I mean, I see pictures of development teams and teams of marketers and shit all over the planet. You know, when I say that, I mean, I'm talking about like people in South Korea, people in Vietnam, people in France. And they're not all male, and they're not all white. As a matter of fact, most of the ones in South Korea and whatnot, there are no white people to be found in them. So again, this idea that it's monoracial and gender-centric, it's fucking bullshit. Bullshit. Let's see here. And that's the other thing. There's nothing saying that you can't be a miner. So this idea that miners are massively centralized, that's bullshit. There are miners littered all over the fucking planet. Their scale and which coins that they're mining, that itself varies. But the idea of massive centralization of mining is... You get that by looking at the mining pools. What you don't understand is that the mining pools consist of miners all over the planet. They don't just exist in the United States. They don't just exist in Russia or China. All over the fucking planet. Continuing on. A recent study by a scholar at Princeton University is aptly titled, quote, "The Looming Threat of China, an analysis of Chinese influence on Bitcoin." In summary, the conclusions of this paper are as follows, quote, "As Bitcoin's popularity has grown over the decades since its creation, it has become an increasingly attractive target for adversaries of all kinds. One of the most powerful potential adversaries is the country of China, which has expressed adversarial positions regarding the cryptocurrency and demonstrated powerful capabilities to influence it. In this paper, we explore how China threatens the security, stability, and viability of Bitcoin through its dominant position in the Bitcoin ecosystem, political and economic control over domestic activity, and control over its domestic internet infrastructure. We explore the relationship between China and Bitcoin, document China's motivation to undermine Bitcoin, and present a case study to demonstrate the strong influence that China has over Bitcoin. Finally, we systematize the class of attacks that China can deploy against Bitcoin to better understand the threat China poses. We conclude that China has mature capabilities and strong motives for performing a wide variety of attacks against Bitcoin. Yeah, not really. Everything that this study argues about the nefarious impact of China on Bitcoin can be said and applied to any other cryptocurrency and to the role of Russia in the crypto ecosystem. Second, all trading is centralized, as 99% of all trading occurs on centralized exchanges. Dude, make up your fucking mind. While hundreds of decentralized exchanges have no trading, no liquidity, are collapsing, and centralized exchanges are being hacked daily, as there is not security in keeping crypto assets in a wallet, and once hacked, your wealth is gone forever. Third, the development is centralized, as Vitalik Buterin, creator of Ethereum, is named as, quote, benevolent dictator for life, and there is nothing immutable in the code is law motto, as the developers are police, prosecutors, and judges. When something goes wrong in one of their buggy, quote, smart pseudo contracts and massive hacking occurs, they simply change the code and, quote, fork a failing coin into another one by arbitrary fiat, revealing the, quote, trustless enterprise to have been untrustworthy from the start. That is incorrect. You're going off of one example where Ethereum, because of a massive hack of the DAO, decided to roll back their blockchain and fork from their original design. What resulted was Ethereum and Ethereum Classic. That there were enough people mining Ethereum that said, we want to retain code is law as our motto, and we want to go forward with the original intent of Ethereum. You guys can fork off and do whatever you want. That's why Ethereum Classic is going up too. But you didn't hear it from me. But yeah, the trust issue is one of, it's no different from any other trust issue with any other currency. You place a percentage of trust in the currency, and if they fail to adhere to it, you usually have plenty of time to make your decision as to whether or not you want to stay aboard that ship or move your monetary value somewhere else. Such as one of the competitors it creates due to its issue. But yeah, I don't know. I think that Mr. Roubini is just extrapolating off the example given by Ethereum, and he's drawing a faulty conclusion. His assumption is that everybody is going to be stuck with the trustless or the untrusted venture. And the same thing happened with Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, where people said, we want this out of Bitcoin, and some other people said, no, we're not going to give that to you. We're going to write code that doesn't allow that, but allows this thing that we want to do. And so far, the majority of the network, while they went along for a little bit, are starting to see the writing on the wall with regard to where that direction goes, I think, and have simply stopped updating their software. Or just basically saying, no, we can see that you're going in a place that does not suit our interests, and so we're not going to continue to update your software because we do not want this imposition and do not like it. Anyway, that's my take on it. Let's go ahead and throw down into some music. And I've been playing a little bit. I haven't been playing any Suicidal Tendencies tonight. Let's go with The Miracle here on Coin Metal. And that was Slayer with In the Name of God. And yeah, as far as this goes, we're going to go ahead and close this episode out. Thank you very much for listening. Hopefully you got as much merriment out of Roubini's mind as I did, because honestly, it's not surprising that many institutional players should have odd perspectives with regard to cryptocurrencies, because it seems like many of them just inspect it from the outside. They join up Twitter and they follow a bunch of cryptocurrency involved people, and they gather together the worst commentary about cryptocurrencies and try to assimilate some sort of sense of reality out of it. And this is the wrong approach with regard to cryptocurrencies. Unlike many financial systems before it, we welcome your participation. It actually works better if you do participate with us. And although it is a competition, and many people will resort to tactics that are not necessarily honest, that is the risk that we endure to participate as arbiters of our own value. And I think this is where many people viewing it from the outside miss the whole point of cryptocurrencies. It's the lack of need to trust. Again, I'd like to close this episode out. Thank you very much again for listening. I certainly do appreciate the support. You can find me on Twitter, Facebook, also in the room on Discord and Telegram for Verge Currency. We will be back again on Monday at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And so until then, I'd like y'all to trade safe. Do your homework. And watch out for your own bunghole, because Roubini cannot tell you anything to protect it. Y'all have an excellent weekend. Good night. And as far as our last dance, I haven't even picked anything out. Oh my god. We've got just enough time for something short and sweet. I'm not going to do balance again. God damn it. I keep doing that one over and over and over again, and after a while it'll lose its bang. We don't want that. So I don't know, maybe something from Slipknot. Everything ends. Last dance here on Coin Metal.